to go on the stage, and it's become a pattern in this first week of the Vuelta to make some interesting features stick out on the road. Some technical corners in the final 10K. There are 6 roundabouts within the last 3K today alone. The last one, turning right, is just 700 meters from the line. The road then bends slightly to the left at 300 meters. There's a big right-hand turn just inside of 1K to the line. So there are some turns to deal with inside the final few kilometers as you see how warm the temperature is now. Really getting up there at 37 degrees Celsius. Gogo, I'll let you do the conversion, because mentally, if I try to do it on the fly in my head, I know I'd come up with some crazy numbers, so I'll let you take care of that.
You think you'd mess it up, huh?
I probably would. Instead, I'll just point out that we're under 40K to go.
Yeah, well, let's call it 99 degrees, so a nice hot day. And the other thing about the heat is that it gets the guys dehydrated, and tomorrow is a critical day. So today, a day before a big summit finish, everybody needs to be thinking long-term. They need to be thinking about how tough the race will be tomorrow and how...
With the big mountain day tomorrow, you know the general classification riders are going to sit back and save themselves for the weekend. So you know you have to place a field sprint type of stage ahead of the mountains this weekend. Yet, what the organizers have done is not make it so straightforward, so textbook, that it becomes boring and predictable. They throw in those corners, little undulation, some roundabouts, just to keep it open-ended and create enough variables that it still makes it interesting going into the finale on a day when you know it has to be a sprinter stage.
Indeed. And Steve, these race promoters that put these events together, they're thinking about a lot of different factors. They want to go to a certain town. They want to start in a certain town. They want to lead to an area where they can be close to the mountains and so on. And so they have to put that all into the hopper and figure out how to design the courses. And literally, they have people who go out the whole year, like right after this race is over, they start thinking about next year's race. And they go out and people who are really familiar with the countryside, and they start scouting for areas and roads that they can use in the next year's race. They ask towns for proposals to be part of the race, and they spend the entire next year preparing for the race as soon as this one is over.
Ah, yes. Piedra, who was, I believe, in the break for Caja Rural yesterday. He is from the finishing town today. Has a lot of family and friends coming out, and they are coming into that finishing town now. You see the 8K banner just behind the riders? That is to where the finish line is set up. Again, they're going to go through it twice today. So the first time is just about 7 kilometers or so from where they are at this point. And that's going to be an intermediate sprint. They'll loop around the town and then come back around to finish the stage. See them hitting that intermediate sprint as we continue with our live coverage on the 7th day of the Vuelta here on Universal Sports. Live coverage of stage 7 of the Vuelta a España, brought to you by Your Buds. Almost 35 kilometers left to go. Gap hovering at just under 2 minutes now to our 3 breakaway riders. Again, Francisco Armendia, Christian Nies, and Marco Pinoti, the day's defining break, being chased by this peloton. Lampre in the pink and blue at the front. Garmin Sharp, Omega Pharma Quickstep, Argos, Movistar among the teams up there now, and just about 4 kilometers away from the second intermediate sprint, which is at the finish line of today's stage. So they're going to get a nice peek at what the run-in is going to look like when they come around the town and do it for real in just a little while. And it's a good thing we're going to have that dress rehearsal because, as I mentioned just a short while ago, a lot of turns and roundabouts to deal with in the final few kilometers. Even inside the final K itself, there's some turns that the riders will take note of because positioning later on in the sprint could be key to getting the win.
And have a look at this one right here, all the way around. It's a pretty big traffic roundabout, so it's not that big a deal. You can see most of the guys still pedaling through it. If it were a little bit smaller, that would be really tricky, but look at how small at this point.
Narrow and twisting.
Steve, you mentioned just a moment ago Antonio Piedra, the local man from the town. He described today's finale as full of tracks.
So these three riders will be first through that sprint point at the line. And the peloton rolls in behind them.
And Steve, those real narrow parts that they hit occasionally, those are the places where the peloton is going to be absolutely screaming before at such high speed, because all the riders know that if they're not in good positions where the road is narrow, there's no way at all to move up.
And again, earlier we saw Lee Howard of the Orca Green Edge team with the paper that had the profile and the map for today's stage out on his handlebars, looking at it, getting a sense of what was to come. So now they're going to get an actual look at what it will appear to be when they finish the stage. So it's an interesting time because the riders get to see it firsthand, then they can discuss it among themselves, have a conversation with the team director, and talk tactics out on the road once they make the big loop.
Indeed, and you can see like this right-hander here, and then where the front of the peloton is, that little tiny road. So they got to put that all into their memory, and they're going to have to make sure that they strategize accordingly for the final time they see it.
Just 2 kilometers away for these three riders.
Pinotti is a very interesting case study in a time trial. It's because he's not a big guy. He's on the front of this group right now, and yet he's a 6-time national time trial champion of Italy. And in fact, last year it looked like he was really on the way to a medal at the Worlds when he crashed out in the time trial. The thing about Pinotti is he's a perfectionist. He has a very slippery position. He's super aero. He gets very low and very narrow.
Now look how it's stretched out single file here, and this isn't even the end of the stage. Looks like the field now going under the 2K banner to where the finish line is positioned, but another roundabout just ahead of that. And our 3 leaders. Christian Dees pacing away for Team Scott. Pinotti from BMC behind him, and then Armandia. Now the peloton really moving, but they should feel pretty good about the margin to these 3 riders right now, as we're down to the final half K to the intermediate sprint for the breakaway.
I don't expect any of the guys in the break really too concerned. Maybe the Spaniard in the middle, Armandia, just to showboat a little in front of his home crowd because he's a Spanish rider. These guys really just trying to work very well together to stay away from the peloton more than anything.
Be the finish line in just over 30 kilometers from now, and seeing it for the first time as we just did, those final 500 meters didn't look too bad.
No, they really didn't, Steve, and it's also slightly uphill as well.
All right, so the 1K banner was right there. We saw the red kite as the field went through. Our 3 leaders have gone through the finish line. They're out on the loop now around town.
Brings back memories, the feelings I had being in breakaways late in the race. You go through a big city like this with large crowds and everybody cheering for you, and it can just give you chills up and down your body because there's so much energy in that crowd, and their cheering is almost like transferring some of that energy to you. to try and succeed.
So it's that turn, that right-hander with about 700 meters to go that looks like it's going to be the only difficult thing in the final kilometer in terms of messing up a potential sprint as Katusha will lead the field across the line now.
Yeah, just that slight little bend there inside of the finish line, but pretty wide, pretty good for a big bunch finish. Pretty straightforward. It should be down to the fast men, but hey, it was pretty straightforward yesterday too, and it was a very unusual finish after all.
Well, they only have 6 seconds at the 5K banner, so that's plenty of time for this field to bring them back.
Yeah, a lot of different teams now coming into the mix. Orica Green Edge could not do it on their own, so now it's Movistar up there.
Valverde was second wheel. This is that roundabout we saw before where they went all the way around. So several roundabouts and some technical corners, but the final kilometer, not as bad as the initial profile indicated. They have a turn of 700 meters to go, but it looks like the sprint should be pretty straightforward if it comes down to that. Gilbert and Stibar still hanging on out front with 4K left.
Steve, the sprint, the course may be pretty straightforward, but I just wonder how straightforward the eventual sprint will be if they catch the 2 leaders, because you look at the front of the field, 2 Movistar, 1 Lampre, 1 Euskaltel. There is no team up there with strength in numbers. It is completely mixed up right now.
And if that's the case and it continues this way, it's going to come down to positioning and just all-out speed.
Indeed, and now I'm seeing 3 Skymen up there for Edvald Boassenhagen in the black with a blue vertical stripe. He's the guy who's been trying for it as well.
It may be a freelance opportunity that a rider takes to springboard to a win. But first, they have to catch these 2 riders who are still leading with 3K left.
And this is that section coming off of those bricks and cobbles there that the peloton is really sketchy. And look at Philippe. Boy, he does have some good form. There's no doubt about it. He is absolutely smoking. Now 3K to go.
All around these tight corners and the narrow roads, hard to tell exactly what their advantage is over the peloton. Well, now it's 12 seconds, so they doubled their advantage from the last benchmark on the road. Under 3 kilometers left. They're making it interesting here.
Movistar still on the front right now with 2 guys, and that's not going to bring back the breakaway. There's no way that if we see it like this much longer, those Movistar guys can't do it. They need a team with several guys or a few teams to come to the front right now. This is touch and go.
Not many other teams for the pure sprinters can do it. This is Dan Martin, who crashed. Number 111 has teammates with him trying to get back up into the field here.
That's not looking good for him.
The top sprinters teams just don't have that collective strength right now to come to the front. Orica Green Edge, one of the only teams that can do it. They were riding at the front a short while ago, but now they've dropped off.
Indeed, this is looking actually pretty good right now for the breakaway duo of Gilbert on the front, Stibar behind him, a Belgian and a Czech rider there.
They're adding to their lead here. 16 seconds. They may take it.
I think they have a very good shot at this point, Steve. They are really flying right now. And you know what? Gilbert has to be careful. He's a good finisher, but he cannot underestimate the newfound speed of Zdeněk Stibar. Stibar was not used to sprinting on the road, and he found something he didn't know he had at Eneco Tour.
And Gilbert has been doing more work than Stibar. He's been at the front of that duo more than he's been sitting on. And he was the man who made the initial acceleration that Stibar followed. Here they are with 1.5 kilometers left to go.
Oh, it is definitely going to be down to the wire.
Just like yesterday.
Oh, my goodness.
And again, it's an Omega Pharma Quick-Step rider. Yesterday it was Tony Martin. Today, Stibar. He's got company in Gilbert. They're trying to steal it from the sprinters here. And coming up on the final kilometer. And no organized chase by one sprinter
ultimately into the hands of the breakaway duo. It still doesn't mean they've got it made, but it definitely helps them stay away.
There's the red kite, just over half a mile to the finish. I think they got it.
Yeah, at this point, I would agree with you. They have it. It's Orica on the front, FDJ there in the second spot. And then Argos, so...
Who are you thinking, Gogo? Stibar, Gilbert?
I would really like to see the lead duo and see if Stibar is sitting on at this point, or if he is still swapping poles. If he's not swapping poles, he could take Philippe.
All right, there's an FDJ rider in the blue who's launched a move from the field now. The cat and mouse. And they can't play games for much longer here because now the train is in full effect at half a kilometer to go. FDJ, Argos chasing. Gilbert and Stibar trying to hang on here.
Well, Stibar is in the perfect position, not having to do any work, but are they going to get caught?
They can't wait. They got to go. Now Stibar accelerates past Billy Gilbert. Gilbert's second wheel at 150 meters left to go. Stibar trying to pull away. Here comes the pack behind him. Jack Stibar watches Gilbert come up alongside and at the finish line. Stibar raising his arms in celebration. What a sprint at the end of stage 7.
Oh, Stibar denying the reigning world champion. I tell you what, the Czech rider is really showing something special this year, Steve.
Yesterday, Omega Pharma Quickstep's Tony Martin was just caught at the line. Today, his teammate Stibar just survives at the finish to get the win. The 27-year-old from the Czech Republic, Zdeněk Stibar, coming off his overall win at the Anaco Tour just prior to the Vuelta, now gets a stage win here on the 7th day of the Spanish Grand Tour, coming around Philippe Gilbert at the very end. Once again, denying the reigning world champion an elusive win in the rainbow jersey. And he is our performance of the day, presented by Earbuds. It was close. Steve, they were coming.
He was very much in that position where he had to jump. He sat on Gilbert, waited as the charge came. He kept looking back. And then right at the last moment, he said, okay, I gotta go now. And they were so close to the finish line, Gilbert could not recover, close the gap, and get around him.
Gilbert almost did come around him, though. Right here. Boy, it was close.
And it's funny how it works like that, but that's when everybody has everything on the line. There's no categorized climbs over the first 95 miles of the race, but the last 9, which brings them up to 104 for the total, is that big climb, 3,150 feet of vertical, and that one is going to create a little bit of separation. It starts out quite hard. The 12.5% is early on, and then it levels off a little bit.
And we are looking down live at the peloton on a sunny and hot day in southern Spain. And as far as what is at stake in this stage number 8, I think the big thing is the unknown climb at the end that should really heat up the general classification. May not decide it, but it's a climb that's never been used before in the Vuelta. A lot of these riders, even many of the Spaniards, don't know the climb, so that always adds that element of mystery and intrigue.
Indeed, I talked with Chris Horner's director yesterday. I asked if he had seen the climb, and he said no, they've seen video of the climb. Same thing for Belkin, for Volkamolova. They hadn't seen the climb either. They had video of the climb that they were reviewing. So that tells me 2 things. 1, they're busy guys and they don't have time to go look at all the courses. And 2, maybe they don't think it's going to be incredibly selective, but that also throws a little bit of an unknown into it as well.
There is a little more than 40 kilometers left to go on the stage, and this peloton is just over 4 minutes behind our largest breakaway of the race so far. 13 riders up the road today. The team in the turquoise, that is Astana, the team of overall race leader Vincenzo Nibali, wearing a red jersey today, staying near the front of the peloton. But so far in this first week, the size of the breakaways have been pretty small. 4 or 5 guys, even a one-rider breakaway in Tony Martin just a couple of stages ago. There's Joaquin Rodriguez in the red and white of Katusha, team leader of that squad, riding alongside his trusty teammate Daniel Moreno. And actually Moreno in the white jersey could be a better candidate for the stage win than Perito here today. This climb really doesn't suit Rodriguez as much as some of the other climbs later in the race because of its steady gradients near the finish. He likes the short, punchy, explosive climbs that are short and steep just near the top.
Indeed, and you saw Moreno in a different jersey, the white jersey, as the leader of the combination category, which is the guy who has the smallest number of the sum of their position in general classification, mountains, and points. And he's been very consistent, also has won a stage so far in this year's Vuelta.
All right, the gap slowly coming down. Its largest margin was 4.5 minutes at 1 point, but 13 riders up the road, the peloton in pursuit, and still 40 kilometers left to go on stage 8 of the Vuelta. 13 Vuelta a España on Universal Sports is presented by Your Buzz. Never hurt, never fall out, never stop. And now, on to an increasingly popular segment here on our Vuelta coverage, Ask Go-Go, or Stuff Go-Go as I prefer. We take your tweets, we read them on the air, and Go-Go interacts. And this next week tweet here on stage number 8 coming from Andrew. What's the strategy behind the breakaways? They never make it, and don't they just wear themselves out more? Go-Go? What say you?
They absolutely do wear themselves out, and in a 3-week race like the Vuelta a España, it can actually cause guys not to be able to finish the full 3 weeks of racing because they get so tired from being in breaks. But the reason they do that is because once in a while they are successful. They get their name out there, they get their team out there and their sponsors. And when you look at all these riders from up above here, Lapre, BMC, Vacan Soleil, Omega Pharma, whatever the team is, they're putting a lot of money into these teams. Over $10 million in most of the team's budgets in this bike race. And they got to pay for it somehow. So one way to do that is to put a guy in the break.
And sometimes a rider may be going through his hometown or have friends and family out on the course, so they want to be out front when the race goes through. There's many different reasons why you may be in the breakaway outside of just trying to win a stage.
Yeah, and on top of that, let's take a couple of days ago when Tony Martin did a almost 110-mile individual time trial effort. That meant that his teammates didn't have to chase all day. And in very many situations, if your team doesn't have to chase, then if you do get caught from that break later on, one of your teammates can win the race because they're fresh and they've been able to ride the wheels of the other guys who are chasing.
It's been very exciting almost every single day, especially at the end of the stages in our first week, with Tony Martin getting caught right at the line, with Philippe Gilbert and Zdeněk Štibar yesterday battling it out right before the field was about to catch them at the end of yesterday's stage 7. One true sprint stage won by the Aussie Michael Matthews, an up-and-coming sprinter. So we've seen a lot of action, a lot of drama, and a lot of excitement in the first week. And hey, as we get into week number 2 today, this is where the real racing is about to begin. So the best is yet to come.
Indeed, a lot of guys are going to start to get sorted out over these next 4 days of racing that we have up until the time trial on stage 11. We're going to see a lot of changes, and we're going to start to see who is really in this race with the legs to get it done.
And let's consider the possibilities of the next 3 days in particular. Michael Charel, number 15 of AG2R, sitting back in the field here. 3 straight summit finishes today, tomorrow, and on Monday. 3 increasingly difficult mountain stages from today through tomorrow into Monday. They get harder every single day by just a little bit every day. So if you're a general classification rider, you've been biding your time so far, how do you approach these next 3 days? What are you looking to do tactically?
I think today you're looking to follow a little bit.
Okay,
and not lose time, but not necessarily gain a bunch of time. And let's just note here that Mathieu Boucher picked up that intermediate sprint there along the way from the breakaway group, but I'm sure they weren't really sprinting for it. The guys are really just trying to stay away from the peloton, most likely. But so today, to answer your question, Steve, you want to mark the other guys that are dangerous if you're in trouble, you try and let a guy go who's maybe just a little bit less of a favorite at the end, and then maybe we get another unusual person to snatch a stage victory. And as we get closer to Monday, so the next 2 stages, you can start thinking about being more aggressive. But if you're super aggressive on today's climb, you might be vulnerable tomorrow or the next day.
So we're down to the final 35.5 kilometers of stage 8, and this big breakaway, watching their time slip away ever so slightly, 3:22 up the road. And Horner now just 3 seconds off the general classification lead of Vincenzo Nibali, sitting in 2nd place as we come into another summit finish on stage number 8. And with time bonuses, it's certainly a possibility that he could take back that red jersey, and he says he's going to try. He wants to go for it today, get that red jersey back, especially because of the way he lost it, with the gap that occurred on stage number 4 at the finish. And that's the reason that Nibali is wearing red today and not Horner.
Yeah, Steve, it was really a shame, and I actually spoke with Jose Acevedo, his director, yesterday. Just checked in with him, asked him how Chris was doing, and he said Chris is really good right now. His condition is good, he's recovering well, and he's looking to go for it today. And Acevedo was pretty disappointed the way there was that split in the peloton in that finishing day on stage 4, the day after Chris picked up the jersey. So he ended up losing it on a finish where nobody really expected that. Even Vincenzo Nibali had left the stage because he didn't know he was back in the jersey.
They were all coasting across the finish line. Everybody thought that they got the same time, but it was determined there was a small gap between Nibali's group and Horner's group, just enough for Nibali to take back the red jersey. So Horner in 2nd place instead of 1st as we come to the summit finish on stage number 8.
And Steve, you know, like I was talking about Leopold Koenig earlier, and how it looks like we got a crash here maybe on the back of the peloton. If not a crash, certainly a major bottleneck.
Enough to slow the guys down here at the very tail end of the race. And as Reinhard van Rensburg of Argo Shimano, who was in the white there, and well, here in the green, this is Michael Matthews, the leader of the points competition, and the sprinter for Ulrich Greenedge, who was also caught back there.
Yeah, Christian Knies, the man for Sky, who was in the break yesterday, and it is going fast. So let's see if we actually, oh yeah, we did have a couple